Today, we heard that beautiful passage about all the people who saw Jesus after he rose from the dead, but we don't get to see Jesus face to face until someday when we go to live in his kingdom. So we're called to believe without seeing. Now, I've witnessed a lot of things with my own eyes, and I know baseball season's supposed to be going on right now, but I still have in my heart something that I saw with my own eyes in 2016. The Cubs winning the World Series. It was awesome. I witnessed it. I saw it. So did many of you. I know it happened. I have witnessed the aftermath of some pretty terrible things. A few years back, probably about 10 years ago, in Joplin, Missouri, a tornado struck a town with about a half-mile wide stroke of devastation that went through the town of Joplin. And I was able to go and help with some of the cleanup afterwards. And that's a picture of a gymnasium of the Joplin East High School that was just torn right apart. I saw it with my own eyes. I saw the devastation of Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico, where many homes were destroyed. There's our group rebuilding a home, and we saw actually a wonderful thing. Just the other day, that home that you see there that is just cinder block and with this pile of cement in the middle of the floor, that home is now rebuilt and habitable again, thanks to many volunteers who worked alongside of Hunger Corps. Other things I have witnessed. There's nothing like seeing one of your former youth get ordained into the ministry. That guy in the middle there with the big smile on his face, that's Jake. He's to my right. And I saw him become a pastor, and he's still a pastor to this day up in Alaska. I saw it with my own eyes. I know it's legit. Maybe you all have experienced this. Lion's Den is that picture on top, and right in our own downtown Cedarburg, you've seen the beauty and majesty of the power of God in a sunset or a sunrise. You've seen that with your own eyes. Now, what are some things that we believe, but we cannot see? This is where I would go around if you were here and I would ask you questions. But here are a few that I came up with. The wind. The other day, it was about 50 miles an hour. I couldn't see it, but I could see it pushing the trees and the swing in the backyard. I knew it was there. Oxygen in the air. I don't know. I can't see it. It's all around me. I know I need it, but I don't see it. But I believe that it's there. Oh, and I love this one. This is a GIF from the BBC. Thank you, BBC. And gravity. I don't know why I'm sticking to the ground. I don't know why that bowling ball and the feathers fall at the same rate, but it does. God created gravity. I don't see it, but I believe it exists. A beautiful thing. I believe it, but I can't see it. I'm normally one of those guys that wants to see it to believe it. So if you didn't see it, how many people would you need to convince you that it's true? Because remember, Jesus rose from the dead. The ladies saw him at the tomb, and the disciples were like, what? The tomb is empty. And they went and they didn't see him yet. And then finally, Jesus appeared to Mary and the other disciples. But people weren't believing the message. Now, that's a hard message to believe. I've never seen someone who was dead become alive again. And that's the message they were sharing. So I'm not blaming them for not believing. But how many people would you need to tell you to recognize that Jesus really did rise from the dead? What about two people? There's Danny Bray and I. If we told you, would you believe? Maybe. Maybe not. All right, I hope you would believe, right? What about these guys, our rooted kids? If our rooted kids, all 25 of them, gathered together and said, we saw Jesus, he's alive, would you believe? I don't know. How many would it take? What about these guys, junior high from a few years ago? We had a clue night. They're all gathered together having an awesome time. What if they said, we saw Jesus, he's alive? Would you believe it? How many would it take for you to believe? What about a stadium full of people? This was at the youth gathering. There were thousands of us there. Would you believe then? 20,000 people? I don't know. I probably would. but how many witnesses before you would believe? I walked you through this just a moment ago, but who can you remember that Jesus appeared to? We know to Mary Magdalene in the garden. We know Peter, John, and the other disciples, and we know that story of Thomas, unless I see the nail scars in his hands and put my hand into his side, I will not believe. Thomas saw Jesus too. We know at least 14 eyewitnesses. But if you think back to that reading from 1 Corinthians chapter 15, you'll be reminded that he appeared to more than 500 brothers at one time, most of whom are still alive, though some have fallen asleep. That's a lot of eyewitnesses. It's more than our entire school community, every child in the school and all of the teachers. He appeared to more than all of us. It's living proof. 500 eyewitnesses. 500 people saw the truth. 500 people were able to testify that Jesus is alive. Now, in a court of law, if you get 3 or 4 credible eyewitnesses, you almost have a slam dunk to win your case. All you need is 3 or 4, sometimes even 1, to win your case. So let's do some math, you math people. Mrs. Sieben would be proud of me right now. We've got 500 eyewitnesses plus a 15-minute interview. So let's multiply. Actually, that should be a multiplication sign, not just a plus sign. But you take 500 witnesses, you multiply that time, a 15-minute window. Let's say we interview everybody who saw Jesus risen from the dead. Everyone. Let's see how many hours would that be. 129 hours of testimony of people just giving a short 15-minute recollection that they saw Jesus alive. To put that in a different context, let's say we all came together to hear this testimony. We would have to come on Monday at breakfast, and we could not go home until dinner on Friday. How can we not believe 500 people saw Jesus alive? Paul even urges them in Corinthians. He says, some of them are still around. You don't believe me? Go talk to them. Go talk to them. They'll tell you too. They saw Jesus alive. So there is no doubt. Jesus is alive. He is risen from the dead. Because of that, we have hope and forgiveness. Now, the Gospel of John writes something very beautiful. John wants to make sure we understand why he wrote this book in the first place. And he says, Jesus did many other signs in the presence of the disciples, which are not written in this book. But these are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. John wrote so that you may believe. John wrote so that you may have life. John wrote so that you might have forgiveness, because what he wrote tells the story of Jesus who lived, who died, who rose again to give you life. We believe the eyewitness testimony of others. We believe the 500 who saw Jesus and their written accounts that they wrote down for us. And Hebrews reminds us, even though we don't see, now faith is the assurance of things hoped for and the conviction of things not seen. Yes, we have faith. We trust in the eyewitness accounts of those who saw Jesus risen from the dead. He is alive. And Jesus then echoes, if you believe without seeing, he told Thomas, he said, blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. You are blessed. You believe Jesus is alive. Don't doubt it. Trust the eyewitnesses of others and know for a fact that Jesus is alive. Thank you for sharing that message, and I hope it's real crystal clear that Jesus' resurrection isn't a hoax. It isn't a fake. It is real. 500 people saw it. Jesus is alive.